Have you ever felt like you've been waiting forever for a dream to come true? Like, no matter how much you pray or work or just believe for it, it's just not happening. Maybe it's been months now, or years, maybe even a decade or more, and it just doesn't seem to be coming to pass. I can think of one in particular in my life that I've been waiting for now almost 15 years. It seems unreal. But what if I told you that the waiting wasn't wasted? What if I told you God was doing something in the waiting that you can't see yet? Stick with me because today we're going to talk about why the waiting is going to be worth it all. So, that dream I mentioned that I've been waiting nearly 15 years, that's my dream to get married and start a family. You see, I had big goals of getting married when I was 22, starting to have kids at 25, and being done having kids at 30. So I'm less than 50 when they graduate high school, right? Cool dream. And things were going great because I started dating this guy at 20 years old. We dated for a year and things were great. And I thought that he was the one. Turns out he was not the one. So I went back into a single season. And I have dated guys here and there through that, but this has been mostly a 15-year waiting period. And the thing is, during this season, it gets frustrating, especially when you see all your friends getting married, when you see kids you used to babysit get married and start having kids, and you're still the single one, right? It can get frustrating. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there are times where I am happy being single because I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I can spend my money how I want. Those things are great. But there's something that God taught me during this waiting season that helps me during those periods of frustration. And I want to share this with you today because no matter what your dream is, whether it be dating or maybe starting a business or making your business flourish or traveling the world, no matter what it is, if you've been waiting for it, I believe what God has been showing me is going to help. So God has been reminding me of these Bible stories where he has made a promise to someone, but it took a while for them to actually see the promise come to pass. Let's look at Joseph for a second. Joseph had a dream that he was going to rule over his brothers and be this great leader, but it didn't happen overnight. In fact, his brothers did not like that was the promise that God had given him, and so they sold him into slavery. Pretty harsh, right? He was wrongfully imprisoned at one point, being falsely accused for something he didn't do, and he endured what seemed like countless setbacks to this dream. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. And then there's David, who was anointed as king when he was like yay high, right? They said, I believe studies show he was like 12, 11, I don't know, somewhere around there. That's pretty young. Can you imagine being anointed king when you're that age? That's pretty crazy. But anyway, it was 15 years before he actually saw the throne. And during that time, he was running from Saul, who wanted to kill him, constantly on the run, sleeping in caves. Can you imagine that? I honestly can't, okay? What about Abraham? I mean, God gave him this huge promise of a son. In fact, he said he'd be the father of many nations. He gave him a vision of counting the sand, and that would be the number of descendants he would have, right? But it took Abraham 25 years before he saw that promised son. Can you imagine? I pray that it doesn't take 25 years for me to see my dream come to life. But anyway, and in that waiting, there were times when Abraham tried to take matters into his own hands and make his dream come true on his own. You see, these men didn't see God fulfilling their dreams immediately. In fact, it looked like it wasn't ever going to happen. But God, even when you don't see it, he is working. Isaiah 45:15 even says, clearly, you are a God who is working behind the scenes. God of Israel, Savior God. And John 15:7 says, my Father is always at work to this very day. When it comes to God's promises, some of us tend to expect it to happen so fast, like Amazon Prime fast, like microwave in 30 seconds fast, right? But God's timing doesn't work like that. In fact, I've heard that a lot of dreams and goals and prayers have what they call a gestation period. Let me put it this way. Did you know that the Virginia possum has the shortest pregnancy of any mammal? It gives birth in 12 to 13 days. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness, that's fast. On the other hand, you've got the elephant with the longest pregnancy lasting nearly 2 years. That's a long time. You know, I have a sister-in-law who just had a baby, and I can tell you now she would not have wanted a pregnancy lasting 2 years. But here's the thing. When the baby possum is born, it is small, it's tiny, it's underdeveloped even. You know, a lot of animals that are born small like that, they can't even open their eyes yet, that sort of thing. They're completely dependent upon their mother at that point, right? But then there's the baby elephant. You see, when the baby elephant is born after those 2 long years, it is large and strong and developed and ready to walk within hours, right? You know, sometimes our dreams are like the possum's pregnancy, where they do happen quickly, right? They're quick and easy. They come to pass really fast. But the thing about those dreams is they're typically really small. They're not huge, out of this world, God-sized dreams, right? They're little, they can happen fast. But some of our dreams, like my dream to get married, is obviously an elephant-sized dream. It is taking much longer, but that just goes to show you that it is going to be a bigger dream than you even thought possible. So let me encourage you today with this analogy that maybe if your dream is taking a really, really long time, like mine is, maybe it's because God has something so big planned. Maybe it's because God is building this dream within you to be so big and massive and powerful, something that can thrive on its own. Maybe that's why it's taking so long. Maybe that is why you haven't seen it come to pass yet. It is in that gestation period, but don't worry, because once that dream is birthed, it is going to be magnificent. It is going to be massive and powerful. It is going to be worth the wait. Now you may be asking, but Haley, why the wait? Why does it sometimes feel like we have to wait so long for God to fulfill his purposes? And you see, the thing is, God's timing is not our timing. In fact, in 2 Peter 3:8, it says, "But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you." A day like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. Wow, that's something to wrap your head around, right? Well, and then Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." And it goes on and on and on. I encourage you to go through and read that. But the key is there is time for everything. In Hebrews 10:23, we are encouraged by the verse that says, "He who promised is faithful." He is faithful to complete everything that he has promised to you. You see, God's plans are always way better than anything that we could ever come up with, anything we could even imagine. It might look like nothing is happening on the surface, but there are things happening that you cannot see. I heard this illustration one time that I thought was so profound, so I'm going to use this as an example. Imagine you have been given a Chinese bamboo tree seed. So it's just a seed. I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. I promise it correlates, okay? So you plant your seed in the ground at your house or wherever you are, and you start watering it, okay? After the first year, what do you see? Nothing. After the second year passes, what are you seeing? Still nothing, unfortunately. and the Chinese bamboo tree is not an elephant, apparently. But anyway, so year 3 comes. Are you seeing anything? No. Year 4, yeah, you guessed it. Still nothing. You're not seeing anything. And so you're getting really discouraged because you're not seeing anything growing from the seed. Maybe you're thinking, okay, well, maybe that seed it wasn't for me. Maybe that seed was not what God had for me. Maybe that seed was dead and I need a new seed, right? Okay, but then year 5 that you finally waited, you've been patient, you've been watering, all that jazz. Not only are you seeing a tiny little sprout, in 6 weeks' time, that bamboo grew 80 feet into the air. 80 feet. That is like the size of an equivalent of an 8-story building. That's crazy. That's hard to believe, honestly, that grew in 6 weeks. It takes them longer to build an 8-story building than 6 weeks. Okay, now let me ask you this. How is that even possible? How can a tree grow that much in 6 weeks when for 5 years you have not seen a thing? Well, here's the thing. During that 5 years, what you're not seeing on the surface is that bamboo is growing roots. It's developing such a massive root system underground, unseen, that it can withstand the growth of 80 feet in that 6 weeks. Can you just take a minute to imagine the size of that root system to withstand that growth? You see, I believe that during this waiting season, while you are waiting for those dreams that you've been praying for and working for and believing for, during that waiting season, God is building that root system in you if you allow Him. He will build that root system so that when that dream finally does come to pass, it is not going to be some measly little plant. I mean, these are beautiful, but they're small, right? Okay, so it's not going to be some little plant that grows, half an inch in 6 weeks. It is going to be a dream that can withstand the growth of 8 stories in 6 weeks' time, because you have watered it and nurtured it and allowed God to build that root system underneath it, allowed God to build that foundation during that waiting period. Just like Abraham, God didn't give him just one baby. He didn't give him just Isaac. No, He made him the father of many nations. That promise was bigger and more significant than Abraham could have ever even dreamed of. You see, if you know the story, Abraham tried to make things happen on his own and had Ishmael. Ishmael was the possum baby. Isaac was the elephant that it took longer for it to come to pass, but it made Abraham the father of many nations. Sometimes we don't understand the wait. We don't know why it is that we have to be waiting, but God is always working. And the good news is He's working on something bigger than you can see. He is building that strong foundation under you to withstand the weight of that big dream. He is laying down the roots. He's preparing your heart, your skills, your character, your life for the growth that is about to happen. So I want to encourage you today that if you are truly waiting for something that seems like it is taking forever, don't give up now. Don't let the silence or the waiting or the unseen discourage you. Trust that God is doing something bigger than you can imagine. And when the time is right, that dream is going to burst forth. I'm telling you, it is going to be like that bamboo tree shooting up further than you could have imagined, bigger and better. The Bible is full of stories of people who had to wait for God's promises to come to pass. But in the end, it was always worth it. The perseverance, the patience, the faith that they showed was what made them worth reading and learning from today. A couple of things I want you to remember today. If you have a dream in your heart, God put it there, and your dreams are worth it all. The waiting is worth it. God is doing something in your life behind the scenes that will be bigger and better and more impactful than you could even imagine. Keep going, keep trusting, hold on to the promises that He is faithful. Thank you for watching today. If you want to see more videos like this to stay encouraged, just hit that subscribe button, and don't forget, you are worthy, loved, and chosen.